Oh, hi. Welcome to another episode of the Westmarch Workshop. Tonight, we're hitting episode 198, closing in on that big 200. But before we get to that, we're just going to have to wait a little bit. And that is the title of the show, episode 198, Now We Wait. A little bit of an alliteration there, kind of. Not really. But anyways, uh, we got some stuff going on in the Diablo community. We got quite a few things to go and talk about, but we're also we're waiting around for a couple of things. It's been 2 weeks since the last episode, and I've had a little bit going on. I've gotten a little bit of testing done on the PTR, but not a lot. And there's been some issues, with the PTR, which I'm sure a lot of you are probably already familiar with, either checking that yourself or hearing about it on Reddit, Twitter, what have you. And we'll be talking about the PTR here in a little bit. But there's also some other cool things that are going on. And I just wanted to go and mention this now ahead of time, so that way you're set and you're ready. If you're watching the episode, you're at least catching the first couple minutes. Episode 199 is going to be 199 is going to be delayed slightly. Under normal circumstances, I would be recording that episode on the 28th of October, but I have the surgery for my nose next week. And they recommend at least a couple days to a week, depending upon the severity of the surgery and how big that it is. Because they're until they start cutting into the tissue, they're not sure, how much they're gonna have to excise from the nose. And if it's large enough, it could also require a skin graft. And even though it's not that big of a deal, it's not dangerous in any way, shape, or form. Physically, I'm going to be fine. The issue is that you have to give it plenty of time to heal properly to reduce scarring, and because it's right smack dab in the middle of my face, it makes it a little bit more important. And then also, apparently, there's something also with just the tissue and the blood structure in that area where you can't have elevated with especially the first 48 hours, you can't have elevated blood pressure. So after the day of and for a couple days after the procedure, my phone is being turned off. My regular phone, my work phone, the buildings can burn down. I am not answering those phones. Because they usually end up raising my blood pressure for one reason or another. But yeah, I expect that I will probably be recording episode 199 on what would be the normal record date of November 11th. So it's gonna be about a month, before the next episode. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on that one. Make it clear, the show's not going anywhere. Just taking a brief hiatus. We're skipping an episode, just so that way I have some time to recover, recuperate, and all other types of stuff. And who knows? When I come back, it could be not much. If I can figure out in the camera, I should know where this thing is on my nose, but looking in the camera, it's all reversed. It hopefully shouldn't be anything worse than just that little blemish that you see there, but could be a scar that I got in a knife fight in Guatemala, when there was $500,000 on the line or something like that. I don't know. We'll come up with a story, right? That's all. It's all about coming up with a cool story to explain how I got these scars. But other than that, yeah, it's been busy times at work. We're opening up that my second theater this week, so we're kind of running at full speed to nowhere, because business is of course slow. You check Box Office Mojo and see that the box office isn't doing too hot. One of the big worldwide chains, Cineworld here in the U.S., it's Regal, just shut down last week. They're closing again. AMC is stating that they've got about 6 months left before insolvency, not just bankruptcy, but full on. Well, the company's gone. Good luck, everybody. And that leaves the second theater in that particular area. There are no other theaters within 10 miles. That are actually open. There are a bunch of theaters that are within 10 miles, but none of them are open. And that's going to be the big test of just to see, if people want to go and see a movie, they really only have one option out there, and how busy is it going to get? And that I think is going to be a really big litmus test. It's not as big as my primary location, but it is, it's average size theater. But yeah, industry is definitely hurting. And as like studios like Disney and such continue to push for online and streaming, it makes things even more difficult. But those are topics for another time. Maybe an after show or an in-between show or something like that. I can go back into talking about movies and other things of that nature. But I want to open up this episode with a little bit of something like cool, some nice, good news, positive news, and all that I want to go and throw out there. So I want to say a big, hearty welcome. Vayflare, you might remember, one of the old original Diablo 3 CMs, but she was one of our community managers that then went and became an artist in Blizzard, going through and working on World of Warcraft, but is now going and coming back and has joined the Diablo Legacy team as that 3D artist that we had talked about, many months ago. And so we want to go through, welcome you back. It's good to have you on the team. I can't wait to go and see, everything that you've got ready and waiting for us. And this is really cool because remember, this is the Diablo Legacy team, apparently, as it's now being called, that's handling Diablo 3. I imagine that probably with like that Diablo Legacy team might also include Diablo 2. Because I think Diablo 1 is kind of, that one is, since they've given it over to GOG. But it is nice to go through and see that team expanding. Especially when they're really, pouring their heart and their soul into Diablo 3 with, the limited team size and the limited resources that they have available to them. And I believe it's been showing, because you've been seeing a lot more activity on the PTRs, kind of as like the past like year and a half, 2 years since they've been going through and creating content for these theme seasons, that you're noticing kind of like an upward trend in the overall amount of people that you're seeing on the PTR, or the amount of time that they're spending on the PTR. They're playing a little bit longer every time, so it's so cool to go through and see that team just get more resources, that they're capable of going through and doing more. Now that they're not, having to go and reuse or repurpose old assets, just recolor some spell effects and things like that, they can actually go and create like brand new models or completely re-rig things in order to get like new beasties or new sets, things like that they can really open up there and just do more content. Now it is with the caveat that it's still a very small team, and she's going to be more or less kind of like solely supporting that Diablo Legacy team with going through and doing that content. So it's not going to be like whole new zones and things like that, but maybe a new boss, like some new monsters to throw in some new mechanics, things like that. But it's cool, all really good stuff, and it's good to just have her back on the team. She's been gone for a while, but if you're like an OG in the community, you'll remember Vayflare. And I was so happy, in order to see her go through and follow her dream of becoming, an actual artist, because her artwork has always been beautiful. And to, finally get that recognition and getting put onto the art team and leaving community, and then now finally having that chance to come back, to the team where she went through and started. But yeah, as I was mentioning earlier, we've got some stuff to go through and talk about on the PTR. Of course, the big topic lately is that the PTR testing has been extended, and the reason for that is, of course, there have been some issues. The first week was went relatively fine, but the second week of the PTR, once they went through and added in the seasonal bonus, things have started getting a little bit wonky. And it's one of those ones that it had some stability issues at the start, but over a couple of days it just got damn near unplayable when you're going through, and it's something with the seasonal theme is like really taxing those servers out. So this is from yesterday, Tuesday, October 13th. And Pez Radar, Adam, went through and posted, wanted to go through and say, we wanted to give a quick update regarding the PTR for 2.6.10. As some have experienced, we are seeing reports of some latency and login issues with the current update of the PTR. Due to these items, we're planning on extending the PTR for an unspecified amount of time while we continue to troubleshoot the issues behind the scenes. Now, that is something that I wanted to go through and touch on for just a little bit, because even though on one hand, it kind of sucks that, if the PTR is getting delayed, that means the current season is getting delayed, and that it's going to be pushing back the launch of, the 2.6.10 patch, as well as Season 22. But it's all good, because it is better to get it right than to rush it out and be wrong. You can take your time, and people will not remember that the season went on for an extra 2 or even 3 weeks, but they will remember like a buggy batch and a bunch, kind of like a botched launch. So that it's good. Take all the time that you need in order to go through and figure it out, but also going through. Let me just continue on first. During this time, we're asking for help. We would love for people to jump in and play the game as you would on the PTR. As you're going through and doing this, we'll be doing some things that will be changing up the game as we troubleshoot some items on the back end. Starting later today, we'll be turning off the Shadow Clone's seasonal theme. This feature will be turned back on sometime tomorrow. And then starting tomorrow, when they turn back on the Shadow Clones, we'll be turning off the 4th Kanai's Cube slot. That feature will be turned back on after a short period of testing with it disabled. And so they're trying to see, is it the Shadow Clones that are going through and creating the problem? Is it that 4th Kanai's Cube slot that's creating the problem? Or is it a combination of the two that's creating the issue? And I just want to go through and say that if it's an either or, that we have to pick and choose one, please be the 4th Kanai Cube slot. That one is definitely, I think, a far more interesting mechanic in how it varies up your build. That's the one aspect that has the player agency in it. The Shadow Clones, because of the randomness to it, you could of course choose when they spawn, and that's something that is important in the higher level competitive play, pushing those GR150s. That you when you hit those pylons are kind of like planned out. You're not just picking them as they come up, and so you have some agency in when you're spawning the clones, but you don't have any control over what variant it is that you're getting. And for, as we talked about previous episode, there's a lot of variance in the power of some of those builds, though not as much as we had originally thought, as I'll get to in a little bit. But there may be some additional testing that will occur after these 2 phases, but we'll update the thread regarding any additional items or adjustments to these testing phases or these testing periods. Please continue to provide feedback and report any issues you encounter through the PTR, as we'll be paying close attention on these to our end. Thanks again for all the help during this PTR testing phase. So they're going through, they're taking kind of like that leveled approach, at going through and trying to find exactly what the issue is, what problem that they have that's causing the kind of like that latency and the lag or the login errors and things of that nature. And if it is, I really hope that it's not the 4th Kanai's Cube slot that's going and causing the problem. And it might seem strange, why is it going through and why would just adding another Kanai's Cube slot like make it so that way you can't even log into the game? It's very difficult to understand the back end of the video game engines, and how like minor changes, or minor, full finger quotations, changes like adding a 4th slot will have on the game. Like if it wasn't designed for it, you're kind of breaking that infrastructure and then putting it back together. You're not just adding a line. Unless it was designed to be expandable to begin with, you're breaking, you know, major parts of the code in order to rebuild it. Some of my favorite things of remembering stuff like this, and if you're a long-time listener, you've heard this before, but like in Mist of Pandaria and World of Warcraft, they would go through and they would fix a bug for like a raid boss, and then that would break the chess event in Karazhan for whatever reason. You know, it's like how are these two interconnected? And it's you know, it makes no sense. And that's even actually there's a bug on WoW with the Shadowlands pre-patch that just launched, where a raid encounter in Nyalotha is triggering boss mechanics from a dungeon encounter in Shadowlands that hasn't even released yet. So it's like, how the hell does that happen? Yeah, it's weird, and you know, it's like I don't fully understand it. I know the basics, but like the people that actually code or do software development, my hat's off to you for having to make sense of all of that. That does not sound like an easy job to go through and try and debug and fix. But yeah, the PTR, from what we have been able to go through and test, you know, seems pretty cool. There's some interesting item interactions that I'll be talking about in a little bit. But as far as like the PTO and the seasonal bonus, the PTR and the seasonal bonuses are going, those shadows seem to be tuned a little bit differently than what a lot of people in the community were expecting. And it seems that there's some sort of back-end calculations that increases the power of the shadows at lower GRs, but as you go and continue to dial it up and get higher and higher and higher, the shadows themselves seem to do less and less. Now they're still scaling, you know, like with the base difficulty of the game, so that way they're going through and contributing, but the amount of damage that the Shadow Clone is contributing seems to vary a lot between the GR100 and like GR130. Now there were a lot of bugs that were encountered for particular classes, and there was a lot of variance in between, even on the same difficulty, of how much the different of like the 1, 2, or 3 variant of the Shadow Clones were doing. But it does seem as if it is at least like a trend, and we don't know if this has to do with any of the bugs or anything like that. That at least does seem that the damage kind of tails off on the higher end, because you'll see some videos of people going through, oh, my Shadow Clone like one shots the Rift Guardian at like 110, and if you're you know a casual player, you know, that's gonna be cool. You know, it's gonna help you get your seasonal theme and all that other stuff, you know, done and out the gate pretty quickly. But you know, the level of variance in, you know, the builds, or being able to, you know, accidentally spawn something with a lot of hard CC that then, you know, screws up your pull timers and things like that, is not something that people going through and pushing the high end GRs really want to go and deal with. And that's something that you can also hear a lot more about, and to a lot better point, on a brand new podcast that started up, the Danctuary podcast. Particularly, you know, episodes 1 and 2, where they talk a lot about the PTR and like the tuning of the game and such, or the upcoming episode 4, where they're actually going to be having like a roundtable discussion on their thoughts and feelings of that PTR. And I'll be giving the Danctuary a little bit more of a shout out as we get later on in the show. But yeah, even with those things, you know, the full scope and the feel of it. We're still trying to get a handle on the actual sets, and the balance in the PTR has led to some pretty crazy things. If you've been doing any research or looking into the PTR at all, I'm sure you'll have probably heard about the Crusader. And this is something I know SVR went through and put together, like this Crusader build that's absolutely insane. That its bombardment is back with a vengeance, and is just absolutely destroying. This is like one of like the best like you know, trash clearing specs that have like ever existed, you know, since like the Star Pack Wizard, if not even better than that. But it basically revolves around stacking a whole shit ton of sets together in order to go and get some crazy multipliers when you also go and then combine it with like an uncapped multiplier and invokers. And it all is based on like that two-piece invoker set, which increases your thorns damage every time that you hit an enemy or block an enemy or get hit. And there's no cap on it. And so if you have a whole bunch of enemies that are going through and just like wailing on you, you can get a ton of stacks really quick, get a huge multiplier on your thorns damage, and then the bombardment rune goes through and procs. And you're using the bombardment rune, which is I believe barrel of spikes that scales with your thorns damage, in order to go and obliterate things. And but that's, you only really need that two-piece set bonus because all that power is in the two-piece, because then even though you do have that six-piece set bonus where you deal like a very high multiplier of thorns damage, you can get more by stacking a whole bunch of other multiplicative bonuses on top of one another. Because in addition to that two-piece invokers, the two-piece Norvald set, the pony set, has been buffed considerably. Instead of increasing your damage by 100%, it's increasing your damage by 400% while using Steed Charge or for 5 seconds after it ends. And since you're passively going and casting Bombardment, it doesn't really matter that time that you're going through and spending on the Steed, because you're still casting that Bombardment. So you've got that multiplier there. You still can manage to go through and fit in the three-piece set bonus for Captain Crimson's. So that way you're going through and you're getting that huge multiplicative bonus through your cooldown reduction. And then you're actually, because of the way that the sets all fit together, you can still fully equip the six-piece Akan set. So that way you can, you're already going through looking to stack a ton of CDR that to keep the permanent uptime on Akrat's Champion, which was also going and giving you that huge damage buff from Captain Crimson's. And so you've got that going, and then finally, why not throw on a focus and restraint just to go and round out the whole thing. So literally every single piece of gear on your character is a set, and they're all just stacking on top of one another to get to these huge insane multipliers for your damage. That you just have to go into, collect a big pack of mobs, have them wail on you a couple of times, get those stacks up, and then have the bombardment go off. It's really, really crazy, and the damage is just absolutely insane. It's to the point where I know like Rax and some others have talked about like it has to get nerfed. It's going to get nerfed. There's like no point in putting a build guide together for it because it has to. Like it's so out there that it has to get nerfed. And we'll wait and see. Since we're getting a little bit longer of a testing cycle for the PTR. One of the big things that the community had asked for on the PTR was, in addition to having the PTR longer, so we had more period to test these things, to have at least like an additional iteration of the PTR, so we can go through, play it for a little bit, give some feedback on issues that we've discovered, not necessarily solutions to the issues, but issues that we discovered, that the devs can go through, collect that feedback, collect that data, and then do like a second iteration of the PTR with some of their proposed changes. Because normally what we've end up having is we have the PTR, we suggest a whole bunch, the devs go through, make some changes, we get it in the patch before the season. We then don't see what changes that they had in mind until then, and then we're having to go through and give feedback and try and rush like another like mini patch or something like that before the season itself starts. There have been a couple where they have done a second iteration of the PTR, and then done another iteration of changes after that. In between that second PTR or that second wave of the PTR in the patch itself. But it's just more testing. To fine tune that, get that dialed in just a little bit better. But yeah, Crusader right now, absolutely crazy. And then that Norvald set, the pony set, is also just opening up a whole bunch of other pathways and opportunities for the Crusader. I think Udijo went and put together like a speed farm set with the Valor. So it's a Valor speed farm set. This one actually has me really excited because I love the original intention of that set was to make Fist of the Heavens like viable, like in-game build, and then they're just like, nah, it's a Heaven's Fury build now. But his speed farm set is all about spamming these big multipliers for Heaven's Fury or Fist of the Heavens, in running that the speed farm set, to do like some tier 16 and other stuff like that. So I am excited to possibly go through and try that out just so I can play Fist of the Heavens like I've always wanted to, and have it be somewhat viable at least some little aspect of the game, right? That's what matters. At least having some niche that you can play it in. In addition to that, there have been some changes to the wizard. It still needs, like some love. But I know Lexiu went through and found like this really cool interaction with the Death Wish, to where you don't actually have to channel one of the spells to trigger the effect. You don't have to maintain the channel for the full second to get the effect. You just have to channel it, and then a second later it comes into play. And so, he developed this play style, this kind of like hidden wizard build, to go and spam out, to quickly alternate between channeling and casting Frozen Orb, to go and get some pretty gnarly modifiers, and get that up there and pushing. I think I saw a video of him pushing it on the PTR once he actually was able to go and test it out. But of course, it is the seasonal theme and all that of like doing like some mid 120s and such, which for like a low Paragon level, non-maxed out like PDR character is not bad. That shows some later on in the seasons when you have time to go through fish, perfect your gear, get augments, especially that could have some serious potential. And he was actually saying in his original video that if you do the math, which is always kind of like a guesstimate, but could push in potentially into like the low 140s on a wizard, which is insane for a solo wizard push. And then to kind of round out like some of the PTR changes is of course the Necromancer, where that one change for the simulacrums, and it's bonkers. It's just crazy. It was already a decent set. It was kind of not, I say middle of the pack, but middle of the pack as in you can actually like push it into like the 120s, 130s. It was definitely overshadowed by like the Poison Scythe Necro, in the current season, but it has some potential to really push now with just that one item, that one additional item in that 4th cube slot. And I really hope that they go and they find that it's the Shadow Clones that's causing the lag issues, and that 4th cube slot is safe, and that it's so popular that they roll it into the base game. Because remember that when we had the Season of Nightmares, ended up giving us the Legacy of Dreams gym because it was so popular. People enjoyed it so much. It brought back so many people to go through and play the game. Opened up so many avenues and play styles, at the casual level, some at the higher end level, especially for Necromancers, which are so beholden to their ring slots. That is just popular enough and doesn't break the game, that we can keep those 4 cube slots and really just open up some more potential, some more builds. There's power creep. There's definitely power creep, but we've had so many seasons now, and even non-seasons of characters being able to solo clear 150s that I don't think that power creep is really something that matters too much at that point, because we're already there. Now it's just clearing that solo 150 faster, and there's not that exponential continuation of going higher and higher and higher. That we've reached the ceiling. So why not get everybody a little bit closer to that ceiling in order to have some fun? Feel as if they've really fleshed out their character. But that's just some of my thoughts. I've never been all that all that negative of a feeling when it comes to power creep, when there's far less like competitiveness in the PvE scenario. Even though I go and I say like only like this XY, only applies to like the competitive, high end in game players. It is kind of like the wrong word to use, even though I use it a lot. But there's not really a race to the finish or anything like that, and there's a lot of classes that aren't capable of doing a solo 150. There are that can really push those 150, especially when you're dealing with like the seasonal buffs, like the current season included in that, where you can really push that one. You're looking for those snowballs in order to go and clear and kill. But yeah, when you're dealing with, when you have that absolute maximum and you don't really have to worry about people, who's going to be like the world first, or this class sucks so it's not going to get a slot in the in-game raid to actually experience the whole game. You can experience the whole game to any level that you find enjoyment with pretty much any class, especially the power level so high. You don't have to run meta to get like 150s, especially in season. Like in seasonal builds with a 4-player group, you could probably like legitimately do it if you're playing just to the seasonal theme of almost any class. There are probably a couple of pillars that you have to keep in order to set up like the buff trade-offs and stuff like that. But it's like when it gets to that point, who cares? Let people have fun. I don't, as a caveat, I don't share that opinion when it comes to Diablo 4, and I hope that the end game in Diablo 4 isn't like this like minuscule, ever expanding like difficulty system where like power creep is kind of like vague, and that it's a bit more refined, a bit more leveled, that there's a little bit more balance that comes into play of it. And for that, I kind of like look at World of Warcraft with like the mythic dungeons, where each level of mythic dungeon, kind of like the tier sets in the early, or the torment levels in the early level of in-game in D3, that each one of those steps up are rather significant increases in difficulty. If they do that more with like kind of like that mythic dungeon system, where there is a huge scope of difference between like 10 and 15, and like especially when you're early into it, 15s are like impossible unless you're playing at the absolute highest level of play. When you have a more larger steps in between the difficulties and things are a bit more narrowly focused, you can have better control over that power creep. In D3, it was always buff, don't nerf, and so that kind of like led us into that mentality. But I do hope that Diablo 4 gets balanced through nerfing in addition to buffing, in order to keep a level baseline, especially if they're going to be continuing to support the game with expansions or updates or whatever they deem necessary. Because if you let it get too out of control, what if you're 5 expansions down the line? Like we're averaging, like 10, 12 years in between each Diablo game. 10 years, like an expansion like every 2 years or something like that. That's going to be like 5 expansions. We don't want to be hitting for quadrillions in expansion 1. Like how we kind of ended up in Diablo 3. Let's save that let's hold that one back a little bit. But I've started tangenting quite a bit. But as I was talking about, there is a couple of new things going on in the Diablo content creator community. They've been making some waves, making some impressions. One I want to go through and give a shout out to is Hearthstone to Hell. It's kind of like a new fan site podcast that's going and being created by a couple of other Diablo content creators, Shazam and Dead Greed, that are over on the Shattered Soulstone podcast, because they're fans not just of Diablo but also of World of Warcraft, and they want to kind of have that creative outlet to act as allowing them to explore that joint love of the two franchises, instead of having to focus like just on one. I've got all my content for Diablo, and then I've got my content for WoW. I want to be able to go through and intermix that out. So you can go through, check that out. It's hearthstonetohell.com. And you can also find them on Twitter as well. But of course, the big one that's been going through and making itself known is the Danctuary podcast, which is kind of like a joint community endeavor that's been put on between the likes of SVR, Riker, Rax, and others that are going through in order to make this not like any singular like entity, but is really kind of like a communal event, a communal type of content that anyone within the Diablo community has that chance of having their voice heard or getting that appearance on. And of course, full disclosure, I'm on it too, so of course I'm gonna plug it. But it is really cool. It's really awesome. There's a whole bunch of big names. Like when you go through and you start looking at the actual, there are only 3 episodes in, but you've got Dead Set, Blood, you've got SVR, Leviathan, Mr. Llama, Ziggy over from Path of Exile, and a whole bunch of other people that are going through and getting in there, joining the team. They're going to be tackling every possible thing that you can think of in Diablo. A lot of the focus, of course, has been on the PTR in that Diablo 4 quarterly developer update, because those are just like the big recent topics that they've been having going on. And like I mentioned, the 4th episode is actually going to be recording this Saturday the 17th. And you can find those recordings live. You can find them on Twitch. It's Danctuary. If you want to go through and check them out. It's Danctuary Podcast at twitch.tv/Danctuary Podcast for the full address there. You can look for them. Also Danctuary on Twitter. There's a Danctuary Podcast on YouTube. You do have to be a little bit careful on YouTube because it wants to revert your search over to Sanctuary Podcast instead of Danctuary Podcast. So just make sure that if you see that little redirect up at the top of the search bar, that you click on the right one to take you where you want to go. But it's very very 5-head. You're talking like the big brains of the community going and tackling some of the big difficult topics and issues that we want to know. If you want to know the full ins and outs of everything going on in the PTR, what it means for the individual balance for all of the classes, like episodes 1 and 2, they really dig deep into the PTR with some high-end mechanical thoughts and thinking about how you're going to be approaching stuff. Episode 3, we talk about the new skill trees from the Diablo 4 developer update. That one was a lot of fun, going through and being able to talk with like Mr. Llama, Ziggy D, Riker, and SVR, and just like share some ideas and like kind of like have some community thought. Because something that you see a lot in the community that kind of will sometimes, like, one voice will resonate a little bit, and it kind of becomes an echo chamber from there across like the forums, Reddit, and such. And so it's nice to have a couple of different voices that all have a different take. We all kind of had a general consensus like on that show about like what we thought and our ideas for, but it all was a little bit of a different shade, a little bit of variation. And conversation and discourse leads to new and better ideas, and we hope some of that gets picked up by the developer team as we eagerly await the quarter 4 dev update, even though the last one was just a couple of weeks ago, literally. And of course they're gonna have like a PTR wrap-up episode, as I mentioned, this weekend, so please go through, check it out. The production quality is absolutely insane, and it's not from the hashtag professional podcast from my side. SVR does a bang out job going through and setting up and doing all the work on that show. So go through. I believe they just actually added in audio formats as well, because it was just on Twitch and YouTube, but you can now actually go through and check them out on like Spotify, Stitcher, and some other platforms. Don't know if they're going to be adding in iTunes, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to get to any podcast platform of your choice out there. But that, of course, is going to go and bring me to the end of this episode. I thank you all for going through, hanging out in chat here, sharing some stories. In the pre-show, I got to vent a little bit about work. So if you want to go through and take part in that, I record here every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. If you want to go watch the live recordings. But of course, you can find the Westmarch Workshop on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher. We're on like a dozen different podcasting platforms for you to go through and check out. And of course, you can follow the show at the WM Workshop on Twitter, or you can follow me personally. I'm at 9ballgamer on Twitter. I tweet about Warhammer, Diablo, and a whole bunch of other things. But I appreciate you going through, hanging out with me here tonight. I look forward to checking with you soon. Although, just that little reminder from the beginning of the episode, it is going to be a month until the next episode as I go on hiatus. And it was going to be a little bit of a wait, just a little bit of a wait. But I'm hoping that we'll have some cool stories that we can go and share, and maybe even a season start date by the time that we get around to there. Until next time, I'll catch you all later.